I'm Glo Ross. I'm the program officer for the U.S. Social Justice Program. So I'm excited, I'm grateful, I'm humbled to be in conversation with the three of you in the spirit of pausing and reflecting on Arcus's grant making in 2020, which by any measure has been an unprecedented year, but also it's our 20th anniversary. So we're also reflecting on 2 decades worth of grant making for LGBTQ liberation and justice. Arcus has had different variations of strategies to advance LGBTQ rights and justice. But the one consistent piece to that has been to focus resources to those who are most pushed to the margins. We know that we've made some progress, right? World Health Organization in 2019 decided that being transgender would no longer be categorized as a mental health disorder. That's a big victory. We also know that different countries have instituted different legal protections, like in Nepal and Argentina. And then in some US states, like New York, have also extended legal protections for trans and non binary folks. But also, as you all know, we have harmful setbacks, continuing challenges. We have homophobia and transphobia that turns deadly sometimes and it's persistent. We have continued discrimination and persecution in every country of the world and policing of gender expression, even in countries where there are legal protections and those protections are celebrated and codified in the Constitution. So even as we reflect on the victories, we know that there's a lot of work to be done. And we're here to talk about your own perspectives and your own reflections on the movement over this past year, but then also over the past 2 decades.
I almost feel like the biggest accomplishment we had in 2020 was being able to keep going, when so many other kinds of businesses and organizations weren't able to make it through all of the pivoting that we had to do during the pandemic and continue to provide services to some of our most vulnerable folks throughout the fall and winter of 2020 when things were getting so bad. We also were able to keep our thrift store open, which really we opened 3 years ago with help from Arcus to create a more sustainable income stream for our organization and also to create jobs and job skill building opportunities for folks.
2020 was insane as in relationship to racial injustices and police accountability, the murders of here, particularly in Georgia, Ahmaud Arbery, toward the middle of the year, and then, of course, Rayshard Brooks, who was murdered in June of 2020, really led Atlanta down a path of uninvolvement from our, leadership. But I will say that as far as some accomplishments, particularly about, what's possible, right? The world that we are, and share about the world that we're dreaming of, where Black trans folks are not, getting murdered, where there are more resources allocated to our most marginalized communities versus, allocated and invested in prisons and in police.
When I think about my own journey and the journey of the movement, there's almost like a reparative state that's needed within the LGBTI rights movement around race erasure, but also trans erasure. And I think the people within our community that suffered the most within that erasure have been trans women. The whole notion of iconography and who are the icons in our movement is very much framed around gay men, cis gay men, cis lesbian women. The burden on Black trans folks to keep carrying that emotional and activist labor for trans white people, for gay white persons in South Africa is still quite a prevalent thing, as I imagine happens within the US context.
Our movement were multiple movements, right? There was a movement of elders, LGBTQ Black elders, who were really committed to investing in emerging Black LGBTQ leadership during, 2010, 2009. In 2013, SNAPCO was created because there were elected officials who wanted to banish a group of trans women from the city of Atlanta, right? And we think about 2013 banishment, like really, are we like in the medieval times? But that was happening. And in Atlanta and around Georgia in particular, it really was the beginning and conversation about criminal justice reform and why and how are we punishing people for trying to survive. And we've seen over the years from, again, implementing alternative programs, policing alternatives programs in the city of Atlanta, to reforming, and we've had victories around that by reforming marijuana laws in 2017. Again, a victory that was led by Black trans folks and brown queer folks in the city of Atlanta, as well as closing down the Atlanta City Detention Center. And so, again, we've really seen in the South just a conversation and a movement of criminal justice reform issues and abolition practices, practical abolition practices. We are part of a larger ecosystem that has been able to, really be able to be sustained over the last 6 years through the movement for Black Lives and other amazing organizations accomplishing and leading over the past years.
There can be no impact without sustainability, and there's also very little sustainability without impact. And so when we think about the social impact investment that Arcus is making globally and so on, even within this region, you see the immense growth around movement building and what movement building entails. The fact that organizations don't have to consistently operate in a cycle of poverty, moving from project to project life. I think there's a deep understanding that the world needs change, whether it's, within the environmental sphere or within our social justice sphere.
Arcus has always, every single year, been general operating support, which is a trust based way of funding with grantees to say that we know where we need to spend that money, we know where we need to use those resources, and you're there to support what we're doing.
Awesome. Thank you all for your expertise and your perspectives. I'm so grateful. I'm so humbled to even be in conversation with you all.